Very insightful.
So I'm going to introduce our speaker. So here he is, Captain Ben Duelley. Graduated from the United States Naval Academy, and he earned his Naval Flight Officer wings after flight school in Pensacola, Florida, and Norfolk, Virginia. Throughout his 24-year career in the Navy, he served in multiple squadrons around the country, logging flight time in the E-2C Hawkeye and the FA-18 Super Hornet. You have to tell us what those are, because I'm not sure.
Top Gun. Just
Sounds
Top Gun.
cool.
Watch Top Gun.
During his career, he commanded VAW-113, the Black Eagles, served as flag aide to the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy for International Programs, and he spent time in the Pentagon managing large-scale budgets and aviation requirements. After retiring from the Navy at the rank of captain, Ben held leadership roles at J.P. Morgan in cybersecurity and at a small commercial lending firm, and most recently at Collins Aerospace. He's currently studying Christian leadership at City Point College and the Destiny Leadership Institute, and he's the director of serve teams at City Point Church in Allen. So you got him. All right. Ben is an award-winning best-selling author. His debut book, which is here, God Was Always Speaking, I Just Wasn't Listening, shares his journey through depression, faith, and redemption, drawing on more than 24 years of military service, seven global deployments, and mission work in El Salvador. His next book, An Army of Angels Here, releases in March. So let's welcome Ben Duelley.
So I never in a million years thought that suicide would be something that went through my head. Didn't make any sense. I was a successful guy. I did a lot in my career. I did a lot in my life. I was probably a lot like many in this room. I was a child of the 70s and 80s. I had a really strict, tough father. We had a Duelley mantra. We are men. If I needed something to cry about, my father was going to provide that for me. I learned how to suck it up, buttercup. I learned all the words. I learned how to be tough. And I'm not going to stand up here and say we don't need that. We need that. You need to have mental toughness. You need to get through adversity. We can't have a society of people just like collapsing when times get tough. And I'll tell you guys something that might be a little controversial. I'm from the Philly area, and I'm an Eagles fan, and I know where I live. But imagine for a second, and you might have to just step out and imagine with me, where your quarterback is getting ready to play in the Super Bowl. Maybe his name is Dak something, and he's standing on the podium, and it's the week before the Super Bowl. And he goes, "Hey, I'm so excited to play in this game, but listen, I got this little like hangnail right here. So I'm just going to sit this one out." And everybody would lose their minds and go, "Are you kidding me? Like, rub some dirt on it, cut it off, like whatever you need to do, suck it up and get in that game." And so that was my mindset of like, I'm just going to suck it up through everything. And through high school, I was a pretty good student. I was a decent athlete. I got recruited to wrestle at a bunch of Division I colleges around the Northeast. And I ended up choosing the Naval Academy because that resonated with who I was as a person. Not because I had these dreams from the time I was a little kid. I just found that place and I fell in love with it because it's this teamwork mentality, this brotherhood that I fell in love with. And so when I was there, I was like, all right, I got to figure out what my career path is. I want to be a Navy SEAL, because who doesn't want to be a Navy SEAL? Those guys are badasses. And when I got there, every year, somebody graduated from the wrestling team, at least one, sometimes two or three, and they went Navy SEALs. Our conditioning coach, Lieutenant Stu Smith, Navy SEAL, and he taught us how to take our physical bodies and put it to a level that we'd never dreamed of before, and I loved it. It was awesome. And then Lieutenant Stu Smith decided to put us in pool workouts, like swimming pools, because, right, it makes sense. If you're a wrestler, you never know when you're going to need the backstroke when you're on the mat, or if I just had a different stroke. And so we get in the pool the first time, and I was like, okay, maybe Navy SEALs is not for me because swimming is not my jam. So then I looked at Marine Corps. I'm like, all right, well, Marine Corps is cool. Like, it's had that same brotherhood, right, this close-knit nature. And so between my freshman and sophomore year, I went to a training thing. Everybody goes 1 month. You play Marine for a while. And I remember being down there and everybody's just screaming, just yelling at you all the time. And I'd gotten to the point in my life where I'm like, I don't need to be yelled at anymore. I don't know if anybody played Pop Warner football. When you're this tall, all of our dads were the coaches. So I remember Mr. Miller, like with a Marlboro Red hanging out of his face, grabbed me by the face mask and like screaming, like Puff the Magic Dragon, just smoke coming in your helmet. I'm like, all right. And so once that has happened to you, a 19-year-old who doesn't shave, like all of a sudden, dude, you can yell at me all you want. It doesn't matter. I've been yelled at by Mr. Miller over and over again. So I'm like, all right, that door kind of closed. Maybe I don't want to go Marine Corps. What else is out there? And I looked at naval aviation. And I know there's so many kids or so many adults that are pilots that, again, they say, well, the time I was 5 years old, an airplane flew overhead. And I knew one day that was not me. I just kind of stumbled into it. And as I got through flight school and started joining squadrons, I'm like, this is awesome. And I spent the next 24 years of my life flying in some of the coolest airplanes that the Navy has ever had. Until now, because technology's like advanced a lot. But back then, there were some amazing airplanes. And there was one thing that was missing that whole time. And it was God. You see, I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and we had a Lutheran church, a town of about 1,000 people. I could see the church from my backyard. That's where we went, because that's what you're supposed to do. And so there was belief. You know, we all believed that there was a God. My parents made me and my brother go until we were confirmed when we were 16. I heard this last week, and you'll remember the story. There's a huge difference between belief and faith. What do you mean, Ben? Well, I believe that I can go to an airport with a credit card, and I believe I can give it to a guy, and he can put me in a little tiny airplane, and we'll take off, and we'll go up to 10,000 feet, and I believe that he'll put a backpack on me, and then he'll open up the door, and I can jump out and pull this little cord, and like there's a parachute that opens up right there. I believe all that to be true. I don't have the faith in that. That's not for me. Like, go ahead, you can do that if you want. I have belief in myself. I have faith in myself. But that leads to confidence and competence, and I think competence and confidence are both gifts, and I think they're learned skills. And competence and confidence become self-reliance, and the danger of self-reliance is eventually you don't need God, because you become successful at what you do and you realize that he's not there. For me, I didn't see him. I never heard from a God. I remember going to church as a little kid all the way up to a teenager, and I'd sit and I'd listen to this older man just kind of drone on about stories that made no sense. My parents and I never talked about it. We never prayed at dinner. I remember, at 5:30 in the morning, waking up to go run 5 miles before practice. He wasn't there then. I don't know where he was. I don't know where he was when I was in the weight room at 10 o'clock at night after everybody else had gone to bed. I don't know where he was when I was on a deployment and the airplane's on fire and I'm coming back and I don't know if I'm going to make it. Where was he? Where was he when my wife was 9 months pregnant and taking a toddler to the emergency room? And I'm a million miles away and I have nobody to turn to. Like, where is he? I didn't see him. So I became an expert at putting stress and everything that was going on in my life into a box. And I just put it on a shelf and I'll deal with it later. I got to get through this right now. I'm in combat right now. I'm a million miles away again on a deployment. I've got this going on. I have to focus on this. I'm doing this in my job right now. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for the death that just happened. I don't have time for the buddy that just committed suicide, the airplane crash that just happened down the street. Like, I don't have time. I'm going to focus. I'm going to compartmentalize. And so it was all me. It was all me. I did all the stuff until I realized that it wasn't me. And I started to collapse. And it was at the end of my career when the physical manifestations started to just appear in my life. And the problem, when you're a senior leader, you don't get to wobble. And I remember, at first it was just a little bit of a chest pain happening. And then eventually I'd be in a meeting and it felt like a boa constrictor came up behind me and just started squeezing. I'm like, man, I can't breathe. Or it felt like an elephant would come and just sit on my chest in the middle of a conversation with somebody, and I'm trying to suck it up and get through it. I'm just like, I'm dying here. And I ended up at the ER multiple times thinking, this is it. Like, you've called me, this is it. And every time I would just walk out with you're fine. You just got a little bit of stress going on, And what I internalized is if you could just suck it up a little bit more, then you wouldn't be here. And so those ER visits, it just kept the bathtub effect. I'm swirling. And eventually I find myself losing it over nothing. A toddler leaves a shoe out and I'm just screaming at my 4-year-old daughter for no reason. I'm at work and somebody says something, I just snap and I lose it. And everybody around me is like, what the hell is the matter with that guy? And I didn't know. I had no idea what was going on. In the middle of all that, I transitioned from wearing the uniform to civilian life. And I know that everybody transitions to something, whether it's uniform to civilian, civilian to retirement, whether it's that transition for waking up the next day and your spouse is no longer there. You've been married for 50 years. Maybe you've lost a kid. Everyone transitions in life. And I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, I had it so bad. But I'm transitioning from, I'm losing my identity, 24 years of service, and I don't know what to do next. And I struggled. It was so tough. My family and I moved from DC down here to Dallas, and I took a job with JP Morgan, like Jeff mentioned. And man, it was awesome. Like I had made it. I got a job at one of the world's largest banks. I'm in cyber and tech, aviation background. I don't know anything about cyber and tech, nothing. But I'm like, this is cool. They took a flyer on me, and I got a leadership position, and I'm responsible for all this stuff with Chase. It was amazing. And I go into work every day, and I'm surrounded by all these people that are super smart, and I'm learning from them, and I'm listening to them. And I'd come home, and I was coaching wrestling for one of my kids, or I'd be on the sidelines, watching a lacrosse game or watching a soccer game. My wife, we've been married for almost 20 years. I 2 feet from her every night when we go to bed. Like, my life is great. But it was a facade in my head, because every morning that smile I had on my face was just fake. And I'd go to work, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm wearing this imposter suit. I have no idea the language these guys are speaking. I don't even really want to talk to them. And I'd go to the practice fields, and I'd sit amongst parents that apparently their grandparents were born in the same hospital the same day, and their spring break every year, they're all going together. And I'm an outsider, and I try and inject myself, but I can't. I'm not fitting in. And my wife, my beautiful wife of almost 20 years, like, we're 2 feet away, but I can't tell her any of this. Like, what am I going to roll over and say, hey, I can't manage anymore? Like, I just retreat. And so I was just so alone. I was absolutely so alone. And the years and years of boxed up stress and everything that I put into that closet was just starting to spill out into my life. And so on New Year's Eve of 2022, into 2023, I walked out the door of my brother's wedding, right in the middle of it. I'd cracked, and I'm sitting at a table just like this one, and I just lost it. And I get up and I walk out, and my wife turns and probably wonders what I'm doing. And I just walk out the door into the cool night air, and I just start pacing the grounds. And I got tears running down my face. Sorry, Al. I have tears running down my face, and she comes up behind me and she goes, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. She goes, what's the matter? I'm like, I don't know. Just don't make me go back. Please don't make me go back in there. Like, whatever you do, please don't make me go back in there. And she's like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I just want to go home. I just want to be home. And none of it was making any sense in my head, because, again, I've gone through some stuff in my life, but I always kind of looked at it like, I don't have PTSD. I didn't watch a bus full of nuns explode in front of me. I didn't bust open a door in Fallujah with an AR-15 and shoot them. Like, that wasn't me. I just went through normal life stresses like everybody here at these tables. And so I got back to the hotel, which was on the property, and I got underneath the blankets, and I was dressed just like this, and I pulled the covers up, and I just cried. And she's freaked out because she doesn't know what's happening. And so the next day we go home, and for the next couple of months, it spiraled. And eventually I sought some counseling, and it helped. I love counselors. I'm not going to poo-poo them. It helped, but there were highs, and then there were absolute lows where I was doing things that did not make any sense at all. It was one day we were eating lunch in the colony and at Grandscape, and we're sitting across from each other at a table, just having a conversation, and suddenly this wave of emotion just comes crashing over me, and like I can feel the elephant again, and I'm like, excuse me for a second. I get up and I go into the bathroom, and I remember leaning against the sink, and I don't know if I'm the only one or if there's 100 people in there, and I'm just leaning against the sink, and I remember talking to myself like, dude, suck it up. Like, what are you doing? Just get out there. Just be a man. What are you doing? And I looked up, and I saw myself in the mirror, and I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I got to go home. And so that's what I did. I walked out of the bathroom. I walked past my wife, who's sitting at the table, And I walked out the door. And if you know your Texas geography, I live in Allen. It's not close to the colony. And I didn't make it home. I don't know what my plan was. I was just going to walk along 121, I think. I don't know. But I wasn't thinking about it. And I got a half mile maybe, and I sat down on this curb, and I just collapsed into the dirt. And at some point, Eleanor figured out, my wife figured out I wasn't there because I didn't come back. And she's texting me and calling me, and I'm not answering my phone because I don't care. Like, I don't care at all. And she drives up and she goes, "Get in." And I was like, man, she's really pissed at me right now. And I don't blame her because it didn't make any sense. And so I put my head against the glass and we just went home. And so the next 9 months continued like that. I'd have some great days and I would just spiral. And along that period, all during that period, there were some very, very cool, interesting supernatural things that were happening in my life. There were some divine timing things that were happening. God was opening doors, closing doors, and I didn't even see it because I was not even looking for a God. And I write about it in this book that's available on Amazon at a low, no, just kidding. But it is. But so it was 9 months later, though, that I got to this point where I just needed help. And God led me to a church in Allen, Texas. And my friend, Stephen Tucker here, answered the door. And he listened to me. It was a Thursday morning, September 22nd, 2023. It was 9 o'clock, which is the opening hours for the church. And I didn't go there as a seeker. I wasn't looking for God. I wasn't looking for spiritual help. I just needed help with what was going on in my life. And after listening, my wife and I were both saved that morning, about 10:30 that morning. And I learned some things through that whole experience, not in the moment, right? Not as I sat there, but as I reflected back, I learned some things about mental health and about what was going on with my life. And the first thing I learned was recognizing the signs of struggle are so much harder than you think. I don't know about you all, but I remember having training back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s about what suicide looked like. And it was comical things like, well, if they start giving away their stereo, if they start making lists, did I tell you, none of that was going on in my head. And you don't have to raise your hands, but if anybody's been impacted by suicide, if you've known somebody that has died by suicide, you may have heard these words or you may have even said them yourself. What happened? Like, everything was so great. I had no idea. Dude just got a job. He's got a wife. He's got 3 kids. One's in college. Like, everything's great. Or maybe you heard something like, well, I mean, I knew there was some stuff going on. Like, he just lost his father and his mom in the last 6 months. And then him and his wife were splitting up. But I didn't know it was that bad. Why would he do that? Why would he do that to his wife and kids? Those words, like, it came out of my mouth so many times. And even words like, why didn't he just call me? If he would have called me, I would have talked him through it. Well, I can tell you, looking back on just not my own experiences, but those that have been very, very close to me that have committed suicide, I totally missed the signs in myself and in others. And so it's super important to recognize when someone's struggling and reach out and just be like, hey man, how you doing? Like, let's go grab coffee. Let's go talk. The second thing that I took away was that getting help is not just for the weak. And I think it's mental health and suicide prevention have gotten way better in the last 10, 20, 30 years, but there's still this stigma. And it's hard to shake as a dude. I remember a friend of mine a couple years ago was telling me a story. He was running one of the largest air bases in the country, and he had a suicide in his command. And he got everybody together in the auditorium, and he stood up there and said words that we've either said as leaders or we've heard leaders say, like, hey, this is such a tragic situation. I can't, don't know what's going on with everybody, but listen, thoughts and prayers are with the family. We have counselors here, and I encourage you to seek help. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Like, there's no stigma attached. I encourage you to seek help. And my friend left the auditorium. He went back to his office, and he sat there, and one of the counselors followed him in and sat across him and said, hey, sir, how you doing? And he goes, it sucks, but like, I'm okay. She goes, seriously, how are you doing? How are you handling this? My friend told me, he's like, I was getting pissed. I was like, I'm good. Like, I don't need you to coddle me. I'm fine. And as he's recounting this moment, he's telling me, he's like, I'm such a hypocrite, man. I'm telling all these people like, hey, you go ahead and get help. If you need it, like if you're so weak that you can't suck it up, there's help right here. But I'm going to go over here and be a man. Like that's the message that he's speaking. So getting help is not just for those that are weak. The third thing I learned is that reaching out is so much harder than you think. And these two are kind of related. But when I started sharing my story with a lot of friends, I heard a lot of the same comments. Like, dude, you should have called me, man. And at first I internalized all that. I was like, you're right. That's my bad. Like, I should have called you. And then I started to kind of not get mad, but think like, dude, the very thing that put me here is the very reason why I can't reach out to you. Like, what am I supposed to call and be like, hey, Mike, I'm a little sad today. Like, I want to talk. Like, that doesn't happen because we're dudes and we internalize everything. Now, I don't want to speak. Maybe you guys are very sensitive. I'm not. So that reaching out part is so much harder than you think. I also learned a fourth thing that day at 10:30 in the morning on Thursday, September 22nd, and that there's a God that loves me and he had a plan for me. And he'd been talking to me the entire time, my entire life, but I wasn't listening. I wasn't tuned into his voice. I wasn't paying attention. I was just doing my own thing because I was a successful guy. And so that afternoon, I heard him. And I don't mean like I felt him in my spirit. I heard like I was driving with my son. It was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We had just left the church. And my mind is reeling because I'm like, I'm saved? I don't know what that means. I guess it's cool. And I'm alone with my thoughts because I have a teenager and he's got AirPods in. He's doing whatever his 13-year-olds do. And so I'm in my thoughts, just driving. And then I hear this voice. It comes from right here. And the voice says, you need to tell your story. And it was so calm and what's so like direct. And I turned around in my truck because I'm like, who snuck into the back of my truck? Somebody's here with me. That voice was out loud. But I knew exactly who it was. I just didn't know what it meant. I was like, all right, I need to tell my story. Like, okay. So I went home and I'm like, maybe this new church that I just joined 3 hours ago, maybe I'm meant to stand up there on this stage and like speak about my story. So I put together some slides and then I go to my first service and I was like, oh, no, like that's not happening because these guys are really good at what they do. And so then I started reaching out and sharing with other people and just never, it felt good, but it never felt like that's what God called me to do. And so I was saved 9 months after walking out of my brother's wedding. 9 months after I was saved, I found myself in El Salvador on a mission trip that this man invited me to. And no, you don't have to go on a mission trip to experience God. But it's awesome. It's absolutely amazing. And so awesome. Everybody should go. So in El Salvador, and I went down there with this mindset of like, I've traveled all over the world. I've been in the Navy. I've been all these different ports. Like, this will be cool. I've helped people before. Maybe we'll hand out some water bottles. Maybe we'll build some steps at a church. We'll make a difference while we're down there. And so I went down there with this mindset of like, yeah, I'll participate. And I watched God move in ways that I've never experienced before. And for my entire life, it had been me in control. And down there, I learned to speak and what that means to speak to God. I learned what that means to ask him a question and then hear that response. What does it sound like? What does it feel like? I learned to pray with people. I learned to lay hands on the sick and pray for God to heal them. And then I watched him do it in real time. And it was life-changing because I went down there with this guy who's trained to anticipate and execute and solve and lead and command. And I walked out of there going, you just need to stop talking. You just need to listen to me. You just need to pray. You need to wait. And I'll show you some things. And so for me, there were those lessons, the big surprises about how I could change. But honestly, watching the miracles happen was amazing. But one of the biggest miracle transformations, I think, for me personally, is how it just impacted my everyday life. And this is what I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about today, because I'm talking to a room full of Christians. And I know everybody here has their own testimony. And some of you guys are like, yeah, Ben, I get it. Like, what you're saying makes sense. But I learned a couple things as I went through this process. And I'll say the first thing, we all know that salvation It happens like in an instant. It's an instant. Romans 10:9. It's asking for Jesus to come into your life and you are saved eternally. Discipleship is a process and a journey. For me, that has been the most fun experience of this, is that journey. And how does what we learn on a Sunday or what we learn walking out of a lunch like this, how do we apply that into our everyday lives? Because for men like us, I don't want to say what you get, but men like me, sometimes you can be so good at what you do that you forget that there's somebody else involved in how you get there. And so that spiritual misalignment kind of comes up on you really quick sometimes. And I'll give you a few examples. But what I've learned is recognizing the signs of spiritual misalignment are so much harder than you think, because the enemy's really good at what he does. He's been doing it for a couple months. He's okay at it. But I find myself sort of all these little tiny misalignments spiritually. And it's not because I'm a bad Christian, because we're bad Christians. It's because we're busy, capable men, and we can do a lot of stuff on our own. For me, it's something subtle. Maybe it's in the morning. I get up and I'm like, oh crap, I got to prep for this meeting, and I find myself off and I haven't picked up the Bible app or whatever my routine is, and I go, I'll get back to you later, God. Like I got a bunch of stuff going on. And then the next day, it's kind of the same thing, and I get in this cycle, and I'm like, okay, I just need to stop and slow down and involve Him in everything that I'm doing. There's another example. Like I don't know about you guys, I am not a hands up kind of guy during worship. Like that's not me. I don't know. I've been to a couple like very, how do you call them? Emotionally charged services where weird things are happening and snakes are wrapped around people's heads or whatever, like just weird things. And I see hands go up and there's a little bit of shudder. And there are times when I need the Holy Spirit elbow in the ribs to remind me that I'm off. I haven't submitted something. I feel like I'm all in with both feet. Like I'm in this walk, but there's every now and then they're like, you're not. So I'm in church a couple weeks ago, and I'm watching the guy in front of me, and Pastor Stephen plays guitar. He might have even seen this. So I'm watching this guy, and he's got both hands up, and I'm like, good for him, good for him. And I get the Holy Spirit like, hey, he's submitted to me. Are you going to? And I'm like, like no, all the way. And I'm like, fine. And so there's all these little areas in my life where seeing the signs of being misaligned spiritually, they're so easy to miss. So how do you look for those, not just in your day-to-day life, but in your business? Where can you align yourself from that as well? I've also recognized that getting help is not just for the other guy. It's not just for the weak. It's not just at the times when we're at rock bottom. And I'll give you another example. Back in church, altar call happens every Sunday. I'm on the altar team, so I'll pray with people. And there are times that I'm like, yeah, I got this little thing going on in my life, and I go to step forward, and I see somebody out of the corner of my eye step up, and I'm like, oh, yeah, you got cancer. You're dealing with cancer. You go ahead. I'll just wait for the next one. And then somebody else steps forward. I'm like, well, he's out of a job. Like, you go ahead and pray. And then it's like, well, I know you just lost your dad a couple weeks ago, so you go ahead and pray. And then I convince myself, like, I don't need it. I'm good. So how do you tell yourself that getting help is not just for the other guy? In every business decision you make, every time you interview 2-3 people, how do you bring your ultimate partner along with you to go, all right, God, what do I do here? What's my next step here? What do I need to do today? Father, interrupt me. What's more important, this meeting I got coming up or something for the kingdom? And if I can tune my ears to that, if I can tune my heart to that, then I start to make God-informed decisions and not my informed decisions. I was reading this book last year called Experiencing God. Blackaby is the author. It's a great book. And in there's a sentence that he said, if what you want to do is from you and not God, you need to rely on your own resources to bring it about. And I read that, and it was like, whew, what? If what you want to do is from you and not God, then not that it's bad, but be prepared to go at it alone. Don't ask him to bless your plans. Ask what his plans are, and then you align yourself with his plans. Not just in the home, not just, on the sports field, but in the office, everything you're doing. What is your plan for me, God? I need your help here. I can't go this alone, even though I'm a tough, capable man. And the last thing is reaching out is way harder than you think. At least it is for me. Again, I don't want to point fingers and be like, you guys are all terrible Christians. I'll just do this. Reaching out can be way harder. Why? Because the higher your responsibility, the easier it is to become sort of self-centered and like, I got this. I've succeeded at so many different things in my life where I didn't think I even needed God. So like, why can't I do it now? Why can't I do the same thing? And you know what? I don't want to burden my pastor. I don't want to burden my team at work. I don't want to burden my wife with this. Like, I got this. So we internalize. It's because we're disciplined and we're capable. And so how do we combat this? I think you got to find that one person in your life, that one guy that you just give permission to invade your privacy, to ask how you're doing, not how your business is going. We need those areas too. We need our own board of directors for business, but we need our spiritual board of directors to go, hey man, I just need you once a week to say, how are you doing? And when you go, I'm fine, like this sucks, but I'm fine. Like, no, seriously, how's your soul? How are you? Like, where are you aligned? And once you can start reaching out for that help, you realize how powerful it is and how you can actually have a real conversation. The course of my journey, I realized that up until I wanted to kill myself, that I never had a real conversation with anybody in my life about anything. It was all superficial stuff. And that has changed. So how do you find ways to reach out and ask for help when you need it? I'll leave you guys with this. I said this earlier, competence is a gift. But self-reliance is a trap. And that self-reliance does not need a God. So always do that spiritual gut check of like, am I aligned or is this on me? Is this you, God, or is this me? And it'll always keep you on the right track. And so I'll just tell you guys again, don't wait for your own New Year's Eve walkout incident when things are broken. Don't reach out for God when you're at your lowest. And again, I'm telling a room full of men who already know this, and this is more maybe me talking to myself than it is to you. But I thank you guys for your attention. Jeff, I thank you for this platform, and I will hang out as long as y'all want. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
We have a couple minutes for questions, and then we'll end right at 1. So anybody who needs to leave can, but as Ben said, he'll stick around. So does anybody have a question for
Aaron? Yes, sir.
May I buy one of those books from you?
Absolutely.
Sign it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, all right. That's easy. See you. Yeah.
Do you think God has spoken to you again since the car moment?
One other time. One other time out loud where I heard it. I think he speaks to me every day. In El Salvador, we did some exercises while we were down there. And the El Salvador trip consisted of 16 of us. Some were experienced on mission trips. Others, like me, were just like, what are we doing down here? And we just did an exercise where we sat across from each other. And one of the pastors down there, he broke it down so simply. He was like, we make communicating with God a lot harder than we have to. It's recognizing what he sounds like. And so we sat across from each other and we just asked questions out loud. All right, God, what color does this person represent and why? And then we just sat there and waited for an image, a word, a picture, something to go, oh, orange. Why orange? Well, I see you surrounded by fire and there's something going on in your life. And so we kind of worked through that exercise a little bit. And then we just kind of got more, not complex, but we just kept the questions going. All right, God, what movie character does this person represent and why? And every time we did that, at first I was like, this is all BS. Like, what are we doing here? But then you realize when you intentionally ask him a question, he answers you. The Holy Spirit answers you. But if you're not in a heart position or a mind position to receive that, it's just a thought, right? It's just a thought in my head. Like, I don't know, that's weird. It's like that moment where, and this happens to me a lot, I wake up in the morning and somebody's on my mind. I don't know why. I haven't thought of this person since high school, but something is on my mind and I just get this like thought of like, they seem to be having a bad day in my mind. Hey, hope everything's well. I'm just saying a prayer for you, blah, blah, blah. And like 99.99 times out of 100, you get a response back to go, oh, thanks. Like, I really need that. I'm going through X, Y, and Z. 2 years ago, I would have written that off as insane. Like, oh, you got like, there's like a little angel here, like speaking in your ear. But it's not that speaking. It's not like I have a constant megaphone here. And for those of you that understand this, I think you kind of agree with me. If anybody thinks differently, speak up. But that's sort of how it comes to me. If that makes sense.
I was going to ask about your kids. Like, remind us what their ages are.
Yeah.
And then how that you coming to the Lord has changed your house.
Yeah, it completely, like, let's say uprooted everything, but we trundled along for decades. We never went to church. After like I was done when I was 16, we never went to church again. I got all my kids baptized because that's what you're supposed to do. Weddings, funerals, that kind of stuff. My oldest, when I got saved, was 15, 16. He's in college now. I have one who's in high school and one who's in middle school. The middle one and the younger one, all in. In fact, the reason I ended up at the church was because of my middle son. He was at a Wednesday night youth event. I was at a brewery across the street with Benji, actually. And when I got home, I realized that when I walked outside of that brewery that night, I saw my son playing basketball, but didn't realize it was him because there's just a group of kids across the street playing basketball. So what led me to the church, God, obviously, but he dropped a whole bunch of breadcrumbs along the way that I was like just kind of picking up and following. Those two, my middle one and my youngest, they're all in. They're at all the stuff. They're hands up kind of people. Like my oldest, God's working on him. He's working on him. We've had some interesting conversations, but he's not there yet. I pray for him every day. I pray for my parents every day. But yeah, I definitely keep my oldest.
Yes, thank you for sharing your spiritual journey. I always find that God always meets us wherever we're at in our circumstance. And so in your spiritual journey, what do you see is next and where are you heading?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when I started this journey a couple of years ago, I had in my head that God would just lay out your plan and be like, here. I've come to realize that's not how it happens scripturally. I've come to learn that like if he did that, we'd all just screw it up. And so the breadcrumb approach is or a scavenger hunt. We use this term down in El Salvador. Like follow this little scavenger hunt. God tells you, hey, go over there and talk to that person. You go, okay, hey Tim, hey, what's going on? And then while you're talking to him, you kind of feel God go, hey, just ask him about whatever. You're like, hey, how's your family? Oh, and then that breadcrumb approach is kind of how I try and do it. So to answer your question directly, I don't know where these breadcrumbs are leading. I was called to join a 2-year education program that ends in like a certificate in Christian leadership. People ask me all the time, why'd you do that? I'm like, I don't know, because I felt the Holy Spirit go, you just need to sign up for that. I'm like, all right, well, when I'm done, then you tell me what I need to do next. A totally different mindset shift for where I lived 4 years ago. I had a plan. I had a plan for everything. Right? I'm mapping out all this stuff. And now I'm just not flying by the seat of my pants. That's not true. But there's a little bit of like, I'm just gonna keep doing this. I'm just keep doing this. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So probably a very wishy-washy answer, but I'm just stepping and I'll figure out where I'm going when I get there.
Dave? Yeah, so you're talking about your volunteer work that you did in El Salvador.
Yeah.
Now that you're back in the States, it's like, you up here, it's like, are you doing service here and like, do you try to attend like before like over there? Is there specifically
Yeah, so the whole point of when our church goes down, it is about ministering to the people. We go to church services, we pray with people. It's not about giving back. In fact, the pastor that supports us down there, that's been down there for 20 years, he will tell us, like, I don't want you guys doing work because you're taking work away from the locals. So if you're going to do something, give money so that we can give to the locals to do construction projects. So we go down there to minister. We go to English-speaking schools, and we'll just practice English with people. We'll minister to people. And so Back here, like I haven't gotten involved with things that are similar. But what's been cool is to take the miracles that we see down there and realize that they're happening because you're so in tune, right? Like I go down there expecting God to move in certain ways, and He does. Sometimes He moves in different ways. And then you get back home, and what do you just go back to your 9 to 5? You go back to your job. You got a wife, kids, you got all this stuff, and so you find yourself sort of like not retreating, but you're like, all right, I got other stuff going on. And somebody came up and asked me after an event, they're like, you know what, I've been praying for, like, God never does miracles. Like, it's really cool that you get to see Him. And I could feel the Holy Spirit be like, well, have you ever prayed for someone to get healed from cancer? I'm like, well, yeah. Like, how's that work? Like, how, that's a miracle that happens. And so I think we get so ingrained in our everyday life that sometimes, not everybody in this room, but sometimes it's easy to miss what's right in front of you. It's to miss all those doors that opened in a divine fashion to get you to wherever you're sitting right now, and recognizing like, oh, that was actually God that did that. That wasn't me, or I didn't have to be in a special place to do that.
Cool. All right, well, you're gonna stick around, right?
Yes, sir.
And y'all can, the way this works is they don't kick us out right at 1 o'clock. We can hang around for another 15 or 20 minutes, but we try to end at 1, so whoever has to go back to an office meeting can go. So that's that. Darvin had a quick announcement.
Yeah, so we're rapidly approaching our next DFW Technology Prayer Breakfast event, and we have some events coming up for folks that might want to get involved. There's a volunteer, there's a program where you can buy a table and bring 10 of your friends, guests, to the prayer breakfast, or you can sponsor our prayer event or a coffee partner or whatever. If any of you are interested, the DFW Technology Prayer Breakfast is sort of where we disciple the technologist with the true power, and that's the Word of God. And so if you have a technology bent to your business model, you want to circulate with, most of us are already faith-based, but we also disciple people who want to come to Christ.